So first off, happy holidays.
Mm.
Welcome everyone to our post Christmas pre New Year's event. So have a
I like the station sign.
yeah, it is exactly. It's fun. Anyway, so welcome to the Coast Division Saturday Meetup. This is our event here is for the 28th of December. We're gonna have a fairly quick kind of intro this morning. Very quickly, we have a few events coming up in the new year. Wanted to highlight so everybody can get on their calendars. The first is the Bay Area SIG Weekend. That will be the end of January, first weekend at the end of January, January 31st to the 2nd. That is the weekend between the final playoff game and the Super Bowl. So that's the weekend there is no football. That will be at the California State Railroad Museum up in Sacramento. So have to make a quick trip up to Sacramento. Should probably talk about if anybody's interested in sharing a place up there if there's interest. So that'll be at that weekend. It's a cool event if you haven't been to it. Great opportunity to go operate on some layouts up in the area. We will have our Coast Winter Meet on February 15th. That'll be at the Golden State Model Railroad Museum in Richmond. And Jesse, who's here, is sponsoring a square foot building challenge. So hopefully those of you that are builders are in the process of building your square foot challenge and have thought that out.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that when you're finished.
Absolutely, that would be great. That would be great. Would you get this done with this? Then we do that. And then the last thing is to get on your calendar the convention, which is March 27th to 30th in San Luis Obispo. So right now, those are our three events. The one thing we don't have on the calendar yet is the is a um, um, is a I'm sorry, my screen here is doing. Did I stop sharing?
We have Coast Modeling Show and Tell Up.
Oh, interesting. My share here says that I'm not sharing. It's weird. Huh. Oh well. Let me still try sharing. Huh. Ah, here we go. So you stop sharing.
Did you grab control of the meeting, Phil?
Yeah, I did. I
Good.
was trying to
Okay.
stop sharing, but I for some reason, oh, there it is. There's the there we go. Stop
All
sharing.
right.
I apologize for that. It took me a second to figure out how it got in a weird mode because of that the host thing. So
Hmm.
so anyway, what we go for the jump, Jesse. Why don't you talk a bit about the square foot challenge then, because
Yeah,
that's important.
I'm going to send out a note probably tomorrow or Monday. Uh, this square foot challenge is an opportunity basically for everybody to hopefully do something different. It is uh, the train doesn't have to stay on the track. It's not an operation thing. Uh, it's you don't need a master's degree in electrical engineering. It's small. It's a 12 inch by 12
12 foot.
inch, 12 foot. Yeah, I built one of those. Thank you. It's a 12 inch by 12 inch square base. And essentially, anything you want goes on top of that base as long as there is a piece of track uh, on this thing and it'll sit flat on a table. And basically, that's it. And it's geared for people that we never go and I'd love to build a model, but I'm nowhere near as skilled as Earl and building whole sections of track, or I'm never as good electronically as so and so, or this one or that one. This is go take a run at this. It's little and there's no judging. It's just have a chance. One of the things that in the note, I said, you can start with a lifelike plastic snap together model and make that the basis of your diorama. And it's just fine. People should have fun with this. And like I say, this is what we're looking to do. And some of us get a little too excessive about it. Oh my God, it's Pat. And some of us don't. But I would like to see, like I say, I'd like to fill up as many tables as possible.
Hmm.
And the thought, if you go to like Home Depot, they have 24 by 24 inch sheets of plywood, like 1/8 inch ply. You can buy that and cut it into quarters, and you have 4 potential modules to go with right there, and it's real cheap. You can get started.
Yeah, a lot of what I've done is I use 2-inch foam, extruded foam, that I had a bunch laying around, and I stuck it on a piece of masonite. As I say, it just has to be sturdy enough to move and sit on a table. Oh, and the other rule, there's like 3 rules.
Uh-oh.
First rule is it has to be 12 inches by 12 inches. Second rule is it has to have a piece of track on it, any kind of track, any scale, and it doesn't even have to have 2 rails, but it has to have a piece of track, and you have to be an NMRA member to show it at the spring meet.
And as an aside, again, you go to a national or you go to a regional convention, either in or out of region, it also can be entered as a diorama in their contest. So you've got multiple use out of this thing. It's not just a one-time shot.
Yeah. I showed one up at Sacramento just for a show and tell. And everybody loves to see more things. So anyway, hopefully people will get involved in this and do it and that sort of thing. Okay, Phil. Any questions, by the way?
Good. No, that's great. It's great. I hope we have a lot of folks drive fired up. I've got to get myself fired up here. So the last thing I wanted to do before is really a threefold thing. One, we do need more volunteers. If you're interested in volunteering or you know someone who's interested in volunteering, please raise your hand. David has been handling the clinics, and he's actually bought a house in Michigan, so at some point he's going to be leaving us. So be good to have someone start working on clinics with David. The other thing that we absolutely need is clinicians. So if you've been working on something, building something, taking some pictures, and are interested in a clinic, talk to David or myself and get you on the schedule. We do need 2 clinics for Richmond in February. The problem I end up with is 3 weeks beforehand need to have a clinic, and it becomes Earl or David or myself, and it kind of gets repetitive. It'd be nice to get some new folks. So if you know someone, again, who's been working on something, say, hey, let's get a clinic together. The last thing is, I've been asked to run for the VP role. Need to kind of figure out what to do with the superintendent and director role for the coast. If there's anyone who is interested in being superintendent, contact me. Make it very easy to slide over into the role. But we are looking for someone to take on a role there. So those are the 3 kind of needs from an organization perspective. Not really looking for answers necessarily, more communication afterwards. So with that, I'll just kind of throw it open. I know we were having a discussion beforehand. We can just continue that or start a new discussion. Anybody been interested in modeling? Yes, David, go ahead.
Well, first of all, yes, my wife and I now own a house in Saginaw, Michigan. However, we continue to stay with and take care of my wife's father here in Hayward. So I'm not disappearing. Well, I don't know when. We're here taking care of dad until that need is no longer present. So, but yeah, if somebody wants to start to work with me on doing clinic stuff, that would be fine to sort of get ahead of things.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Does the house have a basement?
1,500 square feet.
I hate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of work to be done. The basement is divided with a concrete block wall. I have to have a contractor put in girders, steel girders and posts so I can pull the concrete blocks out, open it up. But, first of all, I just have to get there. We are traveling there on the 6th and actually see the house in person for the first time. We'll be back on the 9th. And then I'll be traveling there every 4 to 6 weeks and doing stuff and maintaining a presence at the house. On the square foot challenge, so this would not be acceptable because it's not 12 by 12, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not 144 square inches. It's 12 by 12. And I don't know, there was talk last time we did this about changing it to a rectangle, to 144 square inches. And then we started falling into the cliff about, well, if I have a curve and I calculate out the, and
Fair
so
enough. Fair enough. Thank you.
the committee of one decided 12 by 12.
That's just fine. That's just fine.
And something else to keep in mind, there is no vertical limit on this thing.
None whatsoever.
Right. And having been to a narrow gauge convention, there were some that were almost 24, 30 inches tall. So let your mind go.
One of the other things that it doesn't have to have a structure. In other words, in the sense of a building. Think canyons and bridges or something like that. No building at all, but you can turn around and there's some people, especially some people who are married to some people, that make great bridges, like Ronnie. And you could do the 12 by 12 with a bridge, not necessarily, just hack off the damn end of it,
It's 11 3/4, smart guy.
Okay, points for you. But anyway, that can be the basis also.
And again, animation is a possibility. There are several here who do that type of stuff. And again, at the narrow gauge convention, there was one that actually had a gunfight going on, an animated gunfight. So yeah, it's your only limit is the 12 by 12, a piece of rail, and you got to build it.
I'm told somebody has a working elevator in one of their structures.
Oh, who could that be?
I wouldn't know anything about that.
But it doesn't have to be. It says, by the way, it's not supposed to be. If you read the big sheet, the flyer, it says not electric. That means not plugged in. But you can have something that's battery run, or, I just didn't want to end up with wires running across the table type of thing. But you can have lights, so you can have all sorts of things as long as they're battery operated.
This also is an opening if you like to build and just to build, but you model HO, so you want to build something in O scale. This gives you an excuse for that O scale model. You can put it there, or you want to go to N scale and you're primarily an O scale modeler. Again, this gives you that option to try something, and I will stress again, you can enter it in the contest as a diorama. You can go for AP points with these things if you really want to. the possibilities are endless on this thing. It's only you limiting yourself. Matter of fact, there's going to be a PNR second division meet up just north of me in about a month and a half. And I'm going to be taking my existing 12 by 12 up there to show them here's something we can do. And they wanted to see modeling, so I'm going to show that. And then I'm going to challenge everybody in our division to, okay, build one and see what we can do for the next meet. So this is, take it out, and it's a great thing to work on if you're working at the Great American Train Show, working on the display table, talking to the public. Work on this model while you're talking to them. It gives you a chance to show modeling to the public and show that you don't need a entire dining table to build a model railroad, if you will.
Pat and I did that at one of the great train shows. He was working on his 12 by 12, and I was making some trees for mine. And people stop and look. They really get excited about, anybody can read a flyer type of thing, but it's doing something. Wow, look how this guy does that.
If you want to try a technique you've never done before, here's your chance to experiment, to try things. And it's, I can only push this to folks. You got to try it. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you, gentlemen. I wanted to digress just for a minute. Phil, is there a train show down in February down in San Jose?
No, so the original train show in San Jose was scheduled for Super Bowl weekend. Like it was the 8th and 9th of February, those 2 days.
Something like that.
And in fact, it was scheduled to end at 3:00 on Sunday. Bill sent out a letter and it said that there were facility issues that would not be resolved by the date. So either that, or maybe they just realized there were issues. I mean, quite frankly, the Sunday thing was going to be an issue, I think, for a lot of people if you had a Super Bowl party to go to, because if you close at 3 and you've got to tear down, that's an hour to tear down at least, and then another half an hour to get home. You're not get home until 4:30, 5 o'clock, and Super Bowl starts at 3:30. So anyone who has a Super Bowl party or anything like that to go to, it was going to be an issue. So I don't know exactly why, but it got canceled. So, and his email said it probably will be postponed, and it said until 2026. So to me, that's kind of So unfortunately, the next train show event will actually be in Sacramento.
What month, Phil?
I think it's later. It's either later in February or early in March. Hang on. I have not put it up on my calendar yet, but I need to get it up there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think ahead for helping man the NMRA table at future events.
Yeah, that exactly. That one, and that one is, hang on, let me look here. Well, maybe I don't have it in my maybe I do not have it in my calendar. I do not have it in my calendar. I think,
Okay, thanks, Phil. It's
Thanks.
not, I just want to make sure that I wasn't going to miss helping at February, so I'll set that aside.
Yeah, hang on. I'll have to pull it up and I'll look it up. We can figure it out here while you guys are talking.
Okay.
Well, the new branch line is out, and I believe in the branch line is a calendar entry for that train show up in Sacramento.
That's a real nice issue of the branch line, by the way.
I agree, Jersey. He did a good job.
Yeah, it's February 22nd to 23rd. So it's the third weekend in February.
Sacramento.
Sacramento. Yeah, it's at
Cal Expo, isn't it?
it's at Cal Expo. Yep. And this one is actually, they have both the Great Train Show and then they call it America's Greatest Hobby. And it's kind of a bit more of a traveling show. They try to get some other vendors to come. So that'll be hopefully a little bit bigger event than the normal train GTS like we have here. Which we had actually a good NMRA day. I think we recruited 14 or so on the weekend in Pleasanton. So it was a fairly reasonable event, other than the fact that it just absolutely poured on Saturday. It rained pretty hard. So
Oh, yes, it did.
it was an interesting day. So anyway, that's really about it from my perspective. Just I think square foot challenge is probably the one thing to focus on, and I put down HomeAbed. I got all my HomeAbed down on my new modules, so those are ready to go. I'm ready for put track down and stuff, getting all the pieces together.
Do you
So
have a
these are
new?
the sections.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
go
go.
ahead, David. I was
Are
gonna
those
ask-
sections? Go.
Okay, I was going to ask your source for HomeAbed.
So I bought. There's a guy called Western Lumber Supply or something like that. I've got his name, and he sells the HomeAbed. He took over the business that's cuts HomeAbed, and so I bought it from him. I ended up. It's not cheap, but it works out pretty reasonably well. If you guys give me a second, I'll put a couple of pictures up. I think problems are on
Now,
my
this is
phone.
where they're taking Homasote, the commercial product, and then turning it into railroad roadbed.
Yeah, so it looks like cork roadbed, except it's ripped out, it cut out of Homasote,
Right.
and it's
I understand that cutting it yourself results in so much dust from the cutting.
well,
Having somebody else do it may be a good idea.
yeah, I actually cut a bunch of it on my little saw when I was cutting, because I actually bought. He's got pre-cut pieces that are for turnouts, and I
Mhm.
decided to try those this time instead of trying to fit it together myself. And I ended up having to cut those, a lot of them short, because it's ON30, fairly short radius turns, so you end up starting the turns fairly close to the turnout. And so I had to cut some of those back, and I've got one of those little saws that I ran it through, and it made an awful lot of mess right there between us. So
Mhm.
it was kind of a, yeah, kind of a bit of a mess, but I like the result, and it works out pretty well from that perspective. And it's, it's if you look at the cost wise compared to everything else you're going to spend money on, it's not that expensive. And especially considering you know, I decided to do the turnouts myself because I went and looked at commercial turnouts, and commercial turnouts are horribly expensive, it seems to me. So
Yeah, the fast tracks jigs aren't cheap either.
But
no, that's true.
if you
But
make a lot of turnouts, though, it can be a good deal.
but once you've got them, you've got them. That's the other thing. So let's see if I've got these here. So
While Phil's hunting for photographs, disappointment is when you get your hands on an old model that appears to be new, um, but has been in the box forever. You start to get it together, you do a lot of work to get the decoder into it, you fire it up, and the decoder's responding, the motor's responding, but the locomotive won't move. And here's a worm gear, right? Well, the locomotive won't move when the bearings the worm gear runs in are frozen. The lubricant turned into an adhesive. And so I'm having to tear the thing apart to get at the pieces here and run them through my ultrasonic cleaner and see if I can get this locomotive to actually move. But that's one of the things about getting something that's been in the box for more than 20 years. Oops. So that's one of my little projects right now, is trying to get the drivetrain to work in this thing. Phil, got your pictures?
Yeah, they're in an email, which is not perfect, but that's okay. We can live with that. So, um,
Hey,
let me
Dave,
do
while
this.
Phil's looking for the picture, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You had dual gauge track on your layout that you tore down, right?
I've never, I
No,
haven't.
no, the other Dave, Dave Connery.
Oh,
That's
I'm
correct.
sorry.
Yeah.
The other
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So did you have dual gauge turnouts too?
I did. And some of them I made out of regular narrow gauge turnouts by adding a track to the outside where that worked for me. It was an inexpensive way of making a dual gauge turnout, because they only needed one side to be standard gauge and the other side to be dual gauge.
Or if it's a gauge separation turnout, you don't need as much.
Right.
Okay. How tight a radius or how tight a turnout were you playing with on HON3? Like 4s or 5s or 6s, do you remember?
I had some 4s.
Did they run okay?
They did, yes.
Okay. Because I'm looking at doing a little narrow gauge section, let's call it. And I was thinking about, number 4 is just to fit stuff in the space I have available.
Sounds like a great 12 by 12 challenge project.
Good sales pitch, Jesse.
I would have never have thought, though, to start with a narrow gauge turnout and then add the standard gauge to it. That's slick.
That is slick.
Okay, back to you, Phil, if you found your pictures.
Yeah, I did, but we'll see if this works. Hang on. And put this one up first. So share my second screen here. These are an email. So this is one of the two modules. The other one I don't have super good pictures of. It's actually a corner module, so it's got a big cabinet built underneath it. But what you can see here is I played for a while, and the lines that you see are the track lines. So you can kind of get an idea. This is 4 feet wide by a little over 8 feet long, so it's kind of almost a 4 by 8. So we go through these. Hang on, let me do the other one first. The other email is a little easier to see.
That looked like a heavy module, Phil.
Yeah. So this is basically what it is. It comes in pieces like this. It's pre-cut, and there are two versions. You can see here. There's a version where these slots, you can either buy it straight pieces, or you can buy it these slot pieces that are designed to curve. And when you buy them, you get, I think, 6 in a bundle, and half of them are cut with the cuts on the side where you notice the edge of the ballast is. The other half are cut from the middle out. So you use, these you use on the outside of the curve. These you use on the inside of the curve over here. So, if you look up here, you can see this is the way I do it. I've got a bunch of weights we bought at some point through the years, and you can put them down with either thumbtacks, because you just push right through it. It's home bed. But what I find is it's just a lot better to put down with thumbtack or with some weights. So, here's some more. And so you can get the curve and you can follow your lines. I put the lines down on the wood first. This is the one disadvantage to this is the turnouts. He didn't cut them as thin, so I have to sand those a little bit. So, here's kind of how you do it. This is kind of putting some glue on the back of the turnout. There's some more weights. These are turned the wrong way, so you don't, and that's kind of what they look like when they're done. So, yeah, it takes,
Are you going to surface that? What kind of surfacing are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to sand it first, sand it down a little bit. I got to sand those other, I was looking at the turnout pieces being a little higher, and I was thinking about trying to do that. It turns out when you use the fast tracks are essentially about 3 inches thick in O scale. The micro engineering flex track, which is what I generally use, is actually 5 inches, scale inches thick. So to make the turnouts match the thickness of the flex track, what I normally do is glue a .040 piece of 125 strip on the bottom of them. So you just basically take a piece of strip, cut them to the length of the ties, hit the tie with a little bit of ACC and throw the strip on there. And now you've thickened the tie out. And when you glue those down, basically, you don't see that piece underneath because the ballast fills up to the ties themselves. Fast Tracks tells you just put wood ties down and stack them to the wood ties, but I like having them all glued down with acrylic caulk, which is what I use to glue track down. And what I was looking at was that differential, whether I could use that to actually glue the Fast Tracks down without the spacer. But I decided that the problem with that is now you have this fairly thin track, which is 3 scale inches, and you got to try to fit ballast there. I decided it wasn't deep enough and the ballast wouldn't look good. So I think I'm going to go ahead and sand them down. That's my kind of the decision I'm at as of this morning. I may go back and revisit that though, because it's the attractiveness of gluing the Fast Tracks directly. I'll show you the picture and kind of explain so I understand the. Hang on, let me pull that one up so that you can see what I'm talking about. It's so when this guy cut them, he actually cut these turnout pieces. If you notice, they're a little thicker. And it turns out that thickness is almost exactly the difference in thickness between the Fast Tracks and the micro engineering ties. The Fast Tracks, PC ties, and the micro engineering cast ties. So if you run the micro engineering on this lower path and then start the turnout on the upper path, you can just glue the turnouts directly on here without a spacer. So that's kind of my conundrum is, do I do that? But then I end up with only 3-inch thick ties that you have to ballast. So I'm concerned about how that's going to look, but it sure would be a lot easier.
Yeah, the drawback is, what that is, you have to cut the Fast Tracks turnouts pretty close. And, what we've tried to do when we build them is leave the rails long because you can get some really nice easements up the turnouts.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges in this is that, when you do these smaller things, you end up cutting the turnouts fairly short. You're right.
Yeah, I usually leave the rails, a good 6 inches long on all the ends, and you can really get some nice flowing transitions.
Hey, Phil, why don't you put down wood ties on the flat part and then sand those down in a ramp rather than
I don't want to do ramps. I'll flatten one or the other, but yeah, I mean, actually, what's interesting is if you let the Fast Track extend, you can just glue 5-inch thick wood ties down on the Homa bed past the turnout part. And I figured as I could just do 3x7s, I could get some 3x7s to use as ties on the raised part. It's basically you got the raised part with the thin PC ties and the lower part that's got the plastic ties on the flex track. The railheads actually seem to match up just about perfect. So the question just is that 3-inch, it's that 3-inch ballasting that's the question.
nobody will know but you and maybe Earl.
I wouldn't even know. Once you paint and ballast it, it all goes away.
Do simple and elegant. I think you have a simple, elegant solution to your problem, and everything else creates a mountain of dust.
That's true. It's an awful lot of sanding to sand those down 1/8 of an inch, or not. It's not 1/8 of an inch. It's 16th
And
of an
Earl
inch.
didn't even flinch, so that's your answer.
Yeah.
What happens in the train room stays in the train room.
That's true. There you go. So
I think you got your
big,
answer, Phil.
anybody got big, exciting New Year's plans?
No, we're just trying to get ready for our trip to Saginaw. We got a lot of details and planning to make happen there. I do have another railroad thing to share. I've been having a lot of fun with this book. I don't know if anybody already has one of these, but if you are focused on a particular year and prototype, this book is amazing. It provides a foundation for selecting the rolling stock that would be found during the year or time that you are modeling. And that is been very useful for me. If nothing else, I save a lot of money at train shows because since I've picked a period, a place, a prototype, and this lets me know, okay, this car I'm looking at the train show, I can go, no, that car doesn't fit. And sometimes I'm wrong. I take them home and it wasn't in service at the time I'm interested in. So I'll do something else with them. But there's so much other information in this book. Just an amazing amount of information. Just a listing on a car tells you so much more about, why these cars are the way they are, where they are, what they're carrying, and really enjoying having this thing. And they're not. They wander onto eBay from time to time, and you don't get them for $1, but I recommend it highly if you have an interest in upping your, I don't know, prototype fidelity. It isn't quite it. Period accuracy, maybe.
And it helps you know that if I'm modeling this part of the country, well, maybe these cars didn't show up here. I know many years ago the NMRA did a republish of one of the 1955 equipment registers, and that was really handy for me. I'm modeling 1960 exactly, well, 5960, so it's a 2-year period, and I've got a more modern one, so when I want to do something modern, I've got it. And they came out quarterly, so you can get one for each year you're interested in. You don't have to get all 4 for that year, but it gives you lots of information. It gives you the numbers. Say you're modeling you want some Southern Pacific cars, it tells you what their numbering sequence was that they were using, because the different railroads would change their numbering schemes periodically through the years, and this gives you more accurate information for the time period you're looking at. It includes the narrow gauge railroads for those who are modeling back in the days of the DNRG as a operating narrow gauge railroad that was interacting with the national network. Well, yeah, they had a list of what cars are available. If you know people who used to work for the railroads, sometimes they'll have those stuck in their collection because the railroads were issued these on a quarterly basis, and usually after about a year, the others would get tossed and people take them home. I find them at estate sales periodically if you're looking for model railroad or estate sales. Now I've got a half dozen of them I'm holding on to a variety of years. I think 1955 is the oldest I've got, and 87, I believe, is the most modern. But they've got all kinds of information in there. So, just
over at the Golden State Model Railroad Museum, we have a few very old copies sitting around.
Yeah, and they're entertaining to read through sometimes, just for amusement purposes.
Railroads you never knew existed.
You can get electronic copies of older versions from what's his name, up in the resin maker that's in Nevada.
Resin maker.
Resin freight car maker
in Nevada.
He's a
drawing
too.
The AAR used to put out a database called UMLR, the Universal Machine Language Equipment Register, and that's what I was in the IT at Southern Pacific, and we used that to update our systems whenever it came out, and that way we made sure we had the right equipment listed, what the specifications are, and we also were able to pay per diem on them based on that.
In
Okay.
the current one register I have here, it has a whole section on how you're supposed to format your railroad's rolling stock information to go into OMLR. And so there's a whole section just about the OMLR system that these registers are built on top of.
Mhm.
So yeah, just a bunch of neat stuff.
Yeah, I understand the database concept. We had I was just a little too early for it when I worked.
Hmm. So who else is doing some modeling stuff? Mr. Gardine, how goes your work there at your railroad?
So it goes well, but I'll preface that by saying that I've taken a job in Torrance.
Ah,
Actually a phenomenally great job, but I haven't renounced my Bay Area home. So I'm going to have a
hmm.
apartment down there, and I'm going to be up here. But I still feel good about my construction of my 1x6 module because that will definitely fit in an apartment that Anita and I have already looked at in Redondo Beach. So
Hmm.
my job's pretty close to that. So the where I'm at on this is I have 3 locomotives, 9 cars, and a caboose, and I got them all up on the track, and I've been trying to switch with this, which is interesting because my 2x4 foot club module only basically supports a locomotive and 5 or 6 cars because it's 4 feet long exactly, and I have a 1 foot long tail module that won't be in the square foot challenge because it's 12 3/4 inches because it has 2 end plates. So it's 12 by 12 working area,
I own a
but it's not a 12
crowbar.
by 12 module for a 12 square foot challenge.
Like I say, I own a crowbar. This is not a problem.
I could take off the end plates and it would
Yeah,
be 12 by 12.
No,
I'm there for you.
that's what we're
And you
afraid
know
of,
what?
Jesse.
That's they're held on by number 8 wood screws. That's
Not a
There you
that's
go.
problem.
not that's not
There you
a
go.
that's not a problem. So okay, so it's got 2 pieces of track on it, and I could I've got a nice I've got a nice mail shed
There
that
it
I
is.
scratch built.
Nice.
All right. You're talking yourself into this, Bob.
Yeah, and that could go. Let's see.
Okay,
That
so
could
we
go
have one
right.
entry
Oh,
now.
it won't fit between it could go behind the track. I could fit it somewhere in there. So
None
All
of us
right.
have ever been accused of good judgment, David. I mean,
yeah.
we'll talk ourselves into anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so anyway, I've been able to run my 9 car train forward and back and pushed it through all of the combinations of sidings and switches in each direction. And all I found was that I had 1 car that had couplers too high that reliably uncoupled, and that I have a slight sag. Not much, but I don't want any sag. And so I'm going to deal with that. That's a bracing issue. And one of the consequences of supporting a module at the ends, you need to be a little more careful with bracing and structure than you do if you support it in the classic 1/5, 2/5, 4/5 positions. So just a little bit more work on that, but everything runs. And I took a video of me pulling my 460 and 4 cars. And the sound, it has sound, and it rolling across my module, and showed that to my new guys that when they say, well, what do you do? And so I can show them a video of a 460 pulling it, and they hear the whistle and all that stuff, and they're like, okay. So everybody liked that. It was a great icebreaker.
Good.
You know,
Nice.
it's interesting you just mentioned that. Um, one of the things I have on my cell phone, and I've showed it to everybody at one point or another here in the group, is I've got that stupid movie that I made, the one with that starts dark and it got the train coming through, and then it pans through the layout, and it runs a few minutes or something like that. And it's got sound and that sort of stuff. And when I was on our trip to South America this last time, out of the blue comes one of the other travelers. This guy has done trains or something. And I showed him the video because it's real easy to find. Press the button and it starts. And he became my best friend. And when you talk about icebreakers, that's so important to have, on your phone or someplace. I have a file called Trains to Share, and it's just half a dozen shots type of thing of the layout. Makes my layout look great, by the way.
Yeah, one of the other shots was I can rotate my module to work on it from the side, which I won't do with the cars on it right now. But like mechanical guys, electrical engineers, everybody, because they can see all the wiring and all the stuff from underneath, so they get to actually see the electrical part of what it takes to make a model railroad. So I had one picture of it on its side, this picture, and then a picture of my '73 Camaro, and
there you go.
That was
How
it.
bad is this?
Yeah. So.
Do you want to adopt me?
No, I got two that are out of the house. But then again, you're not asking to live here.
No, absolutely not. I'm just asking to be in your will.
Oh, okay. That was subtle, Jesse. We like that subtlety.
Yeah.
That's what we financial guys do.
Yeah. A question for Phil. Phil, I probably simply missed it, but when the dust settled, how did the auction go? Hello, Phil?
Yeah, I'm
Oh, there he is.
So interesting question. I think from an item perspective, an auction, it was okay. We didn't have as many. We had about 300 items, I think, we got through. I think one of the things that was interesting was we had most of the items sold. I need to go back and look at the report for what it was, but it seemed like that was pretty reasonable from perspective. Financially, the problem with the auction is no longer covering the cost of the facility. So, as a division, there's good news and bad news, right? The bad news is that we lost probably $300, maybe a little bit more. The good news is we have cash in the bank, so that's not an issue. But, at some point we have to have a discussion about, is the auction, how does everybody feel about having auctions, and if it costs us money to have auctions? So, because I don't see that changing. The senior center is over $600 now to rent it. And, I'm going to go back and see if we can go, you get a better deal back at the Elks. We started off at the senior center, and it was $400, and then they raised the price here post this last event. So, all in all, finding a place that is reasonably inexpensive is a challenge. The other two events we're able to do those at train locations where we don't have to pay a rental fee.
Right.
That makes them reasonable. Then, we can do lunch, and I kind of like doing lunch for folks because it encourages people to come, and I think it's reasonable. But the auction gets to be pretty expensive. So,
Phil, I'm a member of, unfortunately, a great many groups, but we have a problem in one of the groups I'm in. The treasurer really believes that the idea is to build up the reserve.
yep.
There's a number of us that say, no, it's not. We're a nonprofit organization. We're, in a sense, a service to our members. And some things will make money. Some things will lose money. The things that lose money, well, we've got the money in the bank. We just pay for it.
Right.
The most important thing is, and you touched on that, what makes the members happy? I'm paying you dues of some nominal amount every year. Honestly, I don't know. And what are my dues going for?
Right.
You know, the electricity to turn the lights on at our clubhouse. Oh, we don't have a clubhouse. You know, what is the dues
Well,
money going for? What is the
well, so
income going for? And
so
you need a
the
financial plan in a sense or
well, so
something that
the reality is, the reality is the way the NMRA works is the national organization collects dues and retains the majority of those dues.
okay.
So, of the $68 that goes to national, I think, $2 or $3 comes back to the PCR. So it's a fairly small percentage that comes back of the $68. Most of the, if you look at the $68, most of the $68 goes to cover the costs that are at the center, producing the newsletter, to some extent, the train show stuff was a cost structure, some other cost structures at the core. And that's a very long potential discussion about whether those costs are right or not. But we kind of ignore that and say, from a division perspective, we get a little bit of money, but it's a couple of bucks per member. So, we're at 350, 400 members. So we're getting $600-700 a year kind of thing of income from the division, from the NMRA. We also get a little bit from conventions that are profitable. The convention we did was profitable. I think we got about $1,200-1,400, something like that, from as the division from that. So, we've had over the past year, enough income, like I said, to cover the having the auction. And it seems like there's a lot of enjoyment to the auction. I wish we gotten more members there, quite frankly. I mean, that really needs to be one of the goals for when we do one in the spring, is can we get more folks to come and get excited about it. But
doesn't Coast and PCR have a dues membership dues thing?
No, we don't have any dues at all. There used to be there used to be a separate charge, which was if you wanted to get a physical copy of the branch line, but we kind of just eliminated that and said we're just going to do a virtual copy of the branch line. So there are no separate dues, and we don't charge any dues. They're just the national dues that you end up paying. And I think, like I said, I think we're good with that. If I look at the events we do, and one of the things, by the way, I would love to have the conversation about is what kind of, I always call them a field trip event people would like to do in the spring. Is it time? Should we try to talk to Jack and Jackie about going to the Carter Brothers facility in Ardenwood? Is there somewhere else that people would like to go? I was trying to set up for the convention going to the BART maintenance facilities. Would that be an interesting trip to take? So, and if somebody, by the way, if somebody knows somebody who has an in to a facility that would be interesting to go to, let me know and let's try to set it up. Most of the volunteer organization facilities are perfectly happy hosting us because our members are their potential volunteers. So,
Yeah, Phil, for the BART facility, I think I sent you the name of the person at the Golden State Mall Railroad Museum who works at BART.
Yep.
And, he also was part of the Rapido team that created the BART cars that they're selling.
So he and I talked before the convention. I just kind of came to the conclusion it wasn't going to work. Let me go see if I can find his name, or maybe you can send it to me again. Let me ping him and see, because I thought that would have been an interesting trip. It would be an interesting if we could do a Saturday trip. Would be a fun trip to do, I think.
Something else to consider with the auction. We used to have the auction at every PCR convention, and that's a bit long-winded, but possibly when it's in the Coast Division is to maybe make the auction one of the items. One day of the, say, Saturday, there'll be a period of this amount of time when it's going to be the auction, and anybody attending the convention can bring items to sell, at the normal 10% charge, and it may be something that way we've already got the space committed, so it's not an extra expense, and that would give us a chance to get the auction back on at least every 3 or 4 year
Yeah.
interval as part of the convention, and be able to make some money for the region, for the division that way.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
We actually tried on the last convention to look at doing that. It just turned out with Saturday the way, with having some open houses and other stuff on Saturday, we decided it wasn't going to be a good deal. And that was why we had that concept of the consignment corral, was kind of a way to do the same thing, but without having a formal kind of get everybody together and try to do an auction.
We had some kind of facility issue about selling things or auctioning things in the facility, and we couldn't do it or something. That was, I think, one of the reasons. What was it? The Boy Scouts threw us out as an auction place because the Boy Scouts couldn't do. I don't remember
the Boy Scouts went away. That was their problem.
Well, yeah, that's also true, but
no.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the idea of doing something at the auction, next time we have an auction, would be good. Yeah, good, David, go ahead.
Phil and you other gentlemen, Phil has mentioned 2 points here. One, the cost for the facility. Two, the pleasure or enjoyment and interest provided to members. Actually, 4 points. Three, how many members are coming? And Phil, you're saying you'd like to have more to come. If a lot of members aren't coming, then it isn't working in that sense of providing an attraction and an activity that they appreciate enough to come down for the day. But there is one other cost here, Phil. You and many other people bust their keisters to make it happen, and that is a big cost.
That is true.
And I know for myself, it's a lot of work, and that's another thing to weigh in the auction thing here, because I know how hard you work tearing your hair out trying to get the ducks all going and the cats all going in the same direction. And so I don't have an answer. I'll continue to work to support the convention, the auction, because I do see that, some of the guys appreciate it, but there's also those people that are simply there because it gets them more stuff to sell at their tables at shows and stuff.
Right.
And so there's this mix of factors in here. For myself, I'll say this. I think that, if it only costs us $600 for the hall, and when the dust settles, we're out $300, that's not too bad. I would consider that tolerable.
You're exactly right. That's kind of where my head's at right now. We're in the same exact place. And, and I think the other thing that's an interesting comment, you brought this up, is when we do the South Bay event, we've typically had 30 people to 35. That's the kind of number that come to the South Bay. We've done this, and so we have a little bit of history now. We've done 2 of those in September, 2 or 3. We may have done 3 now, but at least 2 in September, at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. And we've had about the same number of people come both times. It's been about 30 people, a little bit more. When we've done the field trips, that's varied as high as 40. We did the first one, but that was just post-COVID to the Railroad Museum with Charlie Getz, and that one I think we got 40. The most we've gotten for any of the others has been about 25. That was to Niles Canyon. And so, but if you look at the auction, we had 50 people at the auction. So the auction actually gets, and used to get 100 people. So, granted, now I would think probably we had more like 450 to 500 members. You go back pre-COVID, there were more members than there are today, so at least 100 more. But we used to get more people coming to the auction before COVID. So the question is, and I think that's one of the questions that I would love feedback on from everyone, which is, how do we get more people involved in the activities that we do? And I look at that from the perspective that, if people aren't involved, are we doing the wrong activities? Are they not interesting? Is there something else that would be more interesting? And then of course the other question is, are people hearing about things? Are we communicating in a way that people understand and pay attention? Are we under communicating? Are we over communicating? So, and that, one of the things is you talk to people, if people didn't go to an event, if you happen to see somebody, knows an NMRA member, say, hey, I didn't see you at the auction. I didn't see you at the event in South Bay. Why didn't you go? And just because that qualitative data is actually really good, because the problem when I send a survey out, the people that answer the survey are the same people who come to the events. So the problem is they're not getting to the people that aren't coming to the events to find out why didn't you come? Oh, it's too far to drive. Oh, you tend to have events on Sundays. By the way, we tend to have events on Sundays because that's the day when we get facilities. Like the senior center is not available on Saturday to us. It's only available on Sunday because apparently Alameda seniors don't do anything on Sunday. So, and the same thing with the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. They have open houses on Saturday. So Sunday is the only day we can get that facility. So, what we tried to do is do those field trips on Saturday, because generally those events we can do on a Saturday. So anyway, just any data would be good, because I really am surprised we don't get more people coming to some of the activities we've had.
In terms of doing surveys, do you think you would get any worthwhile amount of respondees from sending out an email that contained a survey where people would just click on something and send it back?
We've done a couple of those. I mean, we've done them after the conventions. We did one back, a fairly major survey back in 2000, which was about activities and stuff. And that was kind of one of the things that came back and said that, we asked people to rank what they thought was, I don't know if you guys remember this survey, to ask you to rank what you thought was what you liked best. And it had, layout tours, clinics, a bunch of the auction, other things, other activities like that. And ended up that was where the auction came back. So we did a weighting thing. You give 10 points when you rate something. When you rate something number one, it gets 10 points for you, 8 points for number two, 4 points, and so on. And then you multiply those out and you add it all together, and you get a ranked rating based on how people rank them. And It turned out the auction came in, I think, number 6, which was one of the challenges, when I first started doing this in 19, was when I started looking at the auction and realizing we weren't making money. One of the questions was, should we do auctions every other, not 4 times a year, but 2 times a year? And the pushback was really, really hard against that. And of course, one of the questions was, what do the members want? And it turns out there's a bunch of members that really like the auction, but there's a bunch of members that said, I never go to the auction. So I think we've got a good balance right now. If we do 2 auctions a year, I think that's the right balance between the auction, other events, and meeting the needs of people to buy and sell stuff versus 4 times a year. So,
well, the more times a year, the higher the cost. if you're losing money every time, so it's a balance.
And it used to be, before 2019, it was a moneymaker. It was, 2018, 19 were probably pretty flat, but
Hey, Phil, before I go, I'd like to throw in a data point from somebody who couldn't go. So I think one of the things you need to figure out is how many people wanted to go but couldn't.
Right.
And then there are reasons why, and how many people just didn't want to go. And
Right.
then there may be reasons why.
And who didn't hear about it?
I couldn't go because the amount of I was flying out in a day, and if it had been short and an hour would have worked, I might have been able to do it, but it's a time commitment.
Right.
It's not something you can do for an hour and do well. You have to.
You just come to my clinic then. You just attend the clinic. That's all. That was all you had to do.
That would have been the smart move, but I was preoccupied. So I just wanted to say that my data point is that I want to go to them. I will go to them in the future whenever I can. I went to one. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed participating in it. So I'm signed up. It's just a matter of ability. And I think that that's when you're trying to survey, so you can put me in the enthusiastic couldn't go, and that's a whole lot different than don't care. Because you might be able to convince people who don't care that they're interested, but can and can't go. That's sort of like, a different place. So anyway, you guys have a great modeling, and I'll see you guys soon.
Have a good one.
Yeah. Take care. I also have to leave, so I'm going to take this opportunity to cut and run.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. Do we want to just call it for today?
I want to say one last thing.
Yep, sir.
I am changing my model railroading time allocations. And after I get back from our trip to Saginaw, I'm going to start announcing the first of a series of operating sessions at my home layout. And I'll spread some news.
Very cool.
Yeah. Way overdue. But I just changed things just got changed around, and I realized I needed to spend more time doing my own modeling.
Wait,
Jim, what is that?
Was that your square foot challenge building, Jim?
Might be. It's actually my next paper building I'm designing for the paper building. It's in Bodie. It's the old post office.
Ah.
And I found out that using the matte photo paper from, I'm embarrassed. What's his name? Canon. The Canon matte photo paper. It's awesome. Because I've used matte photo paper in the past from like HP and a couple other places, and it doesn't cut well. And when you bend it, it has something that kind of like crumbles on the edges and stuff like that. But this stuff works perfect.
Wow.
You get nice high contrast pictures.
Now, this in the sense of print out a building, if you will, and then use that paper to make either the face or make the building.
Yep.
All right.
It sounds like a new clinic.
That's what I'm working on.
Cool.
And I think I showed last time I showed the really thin paper.
Yeah.
That I could run through my inkjet printer by taping it onto another sheet of paper.
Yep.
Yeah. Jim, do talk to me about doing a clinic at some point on that. That would be something I think folks would enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Everybody have a happy New Year. Enjoy Tuesday night, and we will see everybody in a couple of weeks in the new year.
Yep. Thanks,
Pat,
everyone.
good to see you visiting
everyone.
us, even though you're far away now.
Well, it's one of the few times I get out in the world. I mean, right now we're right through our first week of rain, and next week's supposed to be very wet, and then it's supposed to start lightening up. So Ronnie and I have both been very, very sick for the last week.
So you can tell Pat's been in Oregon for a while, because one of the things I found when I did a lot of work in Oregon, where I go up and you go meet with people, and one of the things I found is that they have this training when you go to Oregon that's called lying about the weather. So when you live in Oregon, you're trained that whenever you talk to a Californian, you say, "Oh, it's just started raining this week, and it's just bad. It's going to rain the next week, and maybe after that it'll stop raining, but it's been awful." And I remember going to see a guy. This was the guy who was the CIO at Textronics. So he's like a reasonably serious human being. And I'd been there the day before in the Willamette Valley, and it was 85, 90 degrees. It was brilliant day. And the next day, it was brilliant day. It was 85, 90 degrees. I walked in, and I did the small talk with the guy. I'm there, the vendor. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, yeah, the weather here is just brilliant. Everybody thinks it rains all the time." And he looked at me deadpan in the eye. He says, "Well, you should have been here yesterday. It rained all day." It was just, and I absolutely fundamentally believe that when you show up in Oregon, and Pat won't tell us this, because one of the things is, like any good conspiracy theory, you can't disprove it, because anyone who's involved lies about whether they're involved or not. So my belief is that when Pat got there, somebody grabs you and takes you aside and said, "Okay, now it's time to learn about lying about the weather, so you can tell the Californians how bad it is up here."
So they'll stay away.
Stay away. Exactly.
The thing is, if you look at Pat's beard, do you see the moss starting to grow in Pat's beard?
Oh, yes. No, I mean, when I was looking at buying, before I retired, I was talking about looking to buy up here. We were already looking at houses a little bit. just for an education thing. And everybody said, but it rains up there all the time. And I said, every house I've looked at has a roof on it. It's amazing.
Yeah,
And I stand by that. It has not rained inside our house once. No, the biggest thing right now is, like I said, I've just been this
I have one.
crud.
This thing is, I grew up in Oregon. I lived in Portland from the time I was 10 until the time I was 19. I live in California.
so
I
my
couldn't
dad
afford
and
to move back now, so it's
my dad and his best friend both bought houses in Tillamook over on the coast, and my dad's house was up on a hill kind of, but the friend bought a house that was down by the ocean. It was a cliff that came down, and the house was built back, within maybe a few feet of the cliff. And the first winter they left and went home and went back. They lived in Reading, so they left these houses in the summer, came back, or in the winter, came back the next spring, and the back wall of that house had mold on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so you actually do get you do get a lot of interesting things. The other thing you get in Oregon that's interesting, Pat can probably tell you, is every house has an old refrigerator out behind it, especially when you get to the coast, because you cut the guts out of the bottom of the refrigerator and it turns into a great smoker.
Ah.
And so that's your old smoker. So these old refrigerators behind the house that have been turned into smokers. So yeah, it's an interesting place. My parents, when they moved up there, this is back many years ago, in the probably the late 90s. They said there were still places where when you drove through, you'd pull into a gas station, they'd refuse to come out and pump gas if you had California plates.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Well, I'm gonna get going. I'll just say that I'll try to take pictures of my future train room in our house in Saginaw, so you guys can laugh
there
at
you
me.
go. So we can be envious. No, so
Yes.
we can all be envious.
You bet.
Uh,
Be
Have
well,
a good one, guys.
everybody.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye
Happy
now.
New Year, everybody.
Happy
Bye bye.
New-
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.
take care all.
My other part to that was that I also went to University of Washington, and the joke was that in Seattle, kids don't tan, they rust.
That or